No food, no water. Only the Black Widow's milk kept the mountain man alive as he stumbled through the ruthless desert, each step a desperate gamble against death itself. The townsfolk had cast him out with sneers and stones, convinced the disgraced exile would become buzzard feed within days. They whispered he'd die forgotten in the sand, another fool swallowed by the wasteland. But deep in the desert's heart lived a mysterious woman, draped in black like death itself, who possessed secrets that could transform a dying man's final breaths into the key to unimaginable fortune. She had been watching, waiting, knowing that this broken wanderer carried knowledge that could topple an empire built on lies and blood. Yet saving him meant exposing herself to the very forces that had already destroyed everything she once held dear. Would her mercy become their mutual salvation? Or would it seal both their fates in the unforgiving sand? Before we continue, comment where you are tuning in from. Perhaps we will publish a story there. The pickaxe struck silver with a metallic ring that should have brought joy. Instead, Eli Kane felt only dread as he stared at the exposed vein running through the mineshaft wall. This wasn't supposed to be here. Not in Section 7. Not where Marcus Thorne had specifically ordered them to dig. Eli wiped sweat from his brow and examined the rich ore more closely. 15 years of mining experience told him this vein was worth a fortune. But something felt wrong. The support beams above creaked ominously. Fresh timber should never sound like that. He ran his calloused hand along the wooden supports. Rotten. All of them. The entire section was a death trap waiting to collapse. Kane! The sharp voice of Marcus Thorne echoed through the tunnel. The mine owner approached with his usual swagger, gold watch chain glinting in the lamplight. Behind him walked Sheriff Nolan Hawks, his badge catching the flickering flames. "Mr. Thorne." Eli straightened. "We need to talk about these support beams. They're not safe for the men." Thorne's pale eyes narrowed. "The beams are fine. You just keep digging where I tell you to dig. Sir, with respect, 3 men have died in cave-ins this month alone. If we don't replace these supports, are you questioning my judgment, Kane?" The threat hung heavy in the stale air. Eli had seen other foremen disappear after crossing Thorne, but dead miners weighed heavier on his conscience than personal risk. "I'm thinking about the safety of your workers." Sheriff Hawks stepped forward. His hand rested casually on his gun belt. "Mr. Thorne knows how to run his business. Maybe you should stick to swinging that pickaxe." Eli bit back his response. He'd document everything, write it all down, present the evidence properly through official channels. That evening, Eli sat in his small cabin drafting a letter to the territorial mining inspector. Measurements of rotten beams, dates of recent accidents, names of witnesses. His father had taught him to keep meticulous records back in the Colorado mines. Documentation saved lives. A soft knock interrupted his writing. Clara Mercier stood in his doorway, notebook in hand. The young newspaper correspondent had arrived in Copper Ridge just weeks ago, full of Eastern idealism and determination to report the truth. "Mr. Kane, I was hoping to ask you about the mining accidents." Eli glanced around nervously. "Miss Mercier, this isn't a good time. 3 deaths in 1 month seems unusual. Accidents happen in mines." She studied his face. "But you don't think they were accidents?" Eli said nothing. Clara nodded and left. The next morning brought chaos. Sheriff Hawks burst into Eli's cabin with 3 deputies. They tore through his belongings like wild animals. Well, Hawks held up a small canvas bag. "What do we have here?" Silver ore spilled from the bag. Rich, unprocessed ore that could only have come from the mine. "That's not mine." Eli's stomach dropped. "Someone planted that." "Sure they did." Hawks smiled coldly. "Eli Kane, you're under arrest for theft." The trial lasted 2 hours. Judge Morrison, who owed his position to Thorne's political connections, barely listened to Eli's defense. The witnesses Eli had counted on either failed to appear or suddenly couldn't remember important details. Tom Bradley, who'd worked alongside Eli for 5 years, wouldn't meet his eyes. "I never saw nothing unusual about them support beams." Sarah Chen, The mine cook, who'd heard Eli arguing with Thorne about safety, claimed memory problems. Don't recall no conversation about beams. Each betrayal cut deeper than the last. These people had shared meals with Eli, trusted him with their lives underground. Now fear of Thorne had turned them into strangers. Guilty of theft, Judge Morrison declared. However, considering your years of service, I'm showing mercy. Banishment instead of hanging. The townspeople gathered to watch Eli's humiliation. Faces that had once shown respect now twisted with disgust and disappointment. Mrs. Henderson spat in the dust as he passed. Young Jimmy Torres, whose father had died in the mine collapse, threw a stone that struck Eli's shoulder. Sheriff Hawks handed him a single canteen and a small bag of hardtack. You got 1 hour to get beyond the town limits. After that, you're fair game. Eli looked back once at Copper Ridge. Smoke rose from the mine operations. More men would die in those rotten tunnels, and there was nothing he could do to stop it. The Sonoran Desert stretched endlessly before him. Heat shimmered off the sand in waves. Eli had heard stories of men lasting 3 days without water in this wasteland. Maybe 4, if they were lucky. He wasn't feeling lucky. By the 3rd day, his lips cracked and bled. The canteen hung empty at his side. Hallucinations danced at the edges of his vision. His father's voice echoed in his mind, teaching him about proper mine construction and worker safety. All that knowledge would die with him in the sand. On the 5th day, Eli's legs gave out. He crawled forward on hands and knees, driven by stubborn will alone. Buzzards circled overhead, patient and certain. The sun beat down mercilessly as consciousness faded. In his final moments of awareness, Eli saw a figure approaching through the heat shimmer. Someone dressed in black, moving with purpose across the desert floor. His eyes closed as gentle hands lifted his head and cool liquid touched his parched lips. Cool liquid flowed past Eli's cracked lips. Not water, something richer, creamier. It coated his throat and spread warmth through his chest. His eyes fluttered open to see a woman's face framed against blue sky. She wore black clothing that seemed impractical for desert survival. Her dark hair was pulled back severely, revealing intelligent eyes that studied him with scientific curiosity. Late 20s, maybe 30. Her hands moved with practiced efficiency as she lifted a strange vessel to his mouth again. "Drink slowly," she said. Her voice carried education and authority. Eli tried to sit up. The world spun violently. "Stay down. You've been unconscious for 6 hours." The liquid had an odd mineral taste, but strength returned to his limbs with each swallow. Around them, canyon walls rose like cathedral spires, creating blessed shade. A small spring bubbled nearby, surrounded by desert plants he didn't recognize. "Where am I?" "Safe." The woman helped him into a sitting position. "What's your name?" "Eli Kane." Recognition flickered in her eyes. "The mining foreman from Copper Ridge." Eli stiffened. Even here, his reputation had preceded him. Former foreman. Former everything. "I know what really happened." Her words hit him like cold water. Nobody had believed his innocence. Not the judge, not his friends, not even some of his own workers. "You don't know anything about me. I know Marcus Thorne framed you." She stood and walked to a collection of scientific instruments arranged on a natural stone shelf. "I know he's been covering up safety violations that killed those miners." Eli struggled to his feet. The canyon seemed to stretch upward forever, its walls lined with green vegetation that shouldn't exist in this wasteland. Water trickled down the rocks in thin streams, feeding pools that reflected the sky above. "How could you possibly know that?" The woman returned with a metal cup filled with the same creamy liquid. "Because I've been watching Copper Ridge for 3 years. From here? Among other places." She gestured around the oasis. "This canyon provides excellent cover, and the water source is reliable." Eli examined the setup more carefully. Sophisticated equipment gleamed in the filtered sunlight. Maps covered a flat rock surface, held down by smooth stones. Charts and diagrams were tucked into waterproof cases. This wasn't some hermit's camp. This was a research station. "What kind of work are you doing out here?" Geological surveys, water table analysis, mineral composition studies. She handed him the cup. The liquid restored his strength faster than anything he'd ever experienced. His mining experience told him it contained minerals, but in perfect balance for human consumption. What is this stuff? Processed spring water, enhanced with desert plant extracts and mineral compounds. You made this. My father developed the technique. I perfected it. Eli noted the past tense. Your father's not around anymore? Her face hardened. Marcus Thorne made sure of that. The pieces began forming a picture. A woman with scientific knowledge, hiding in the desert, watching Thorne's operations. Someone with personal reasons to hate the mine owner. Who are you? Someone who understands what it's like to be destroyed by that man. She moved to the maps and began rolling them up with careful precision. Every action suggested years of practice living in this hidden sanctuary. Why did you save me? Because you tried to do the right thing. That's rare in Copper Ridge. Eli studied her profile as she worked. Something familiar nagged at him. The way she handled the scientific instruments, the casual expertise with geological charts, the educated speech patterns that marked her as someone from a different world than most desert dwellers. How long have you been living out here? 3 years, 2 months, 16 days. The precision of her answer suggested she'd been counting, waiting for something. That's a long time to spend alone. I wasn't entirely alone. Apache traders visit occasionally. They taught me additional survival techniques. She pointed to several plants growing near the spring. Those provide protein. Those have medicinal properties. The combination creates a sustainable food source. Impressive. Eli meant it. Few people could survive a month in this desert, let alone 3 years. Survival requires preparation and knowledge. My father taught me both. What happened to him? Her hands stilled on the maps. Marcus Thorne had him killed. The words carried absolute certainty. No doubt, no speculation. Statement of fact. Can you prove it? I've been gathering evidence for 3 years. She pulled a leather portfolio from a hidden cache in the rocks. Inside, Eli glimpsed photographs, documents, detailed notes in neat handwriting. Evidence of what? Murder, fraud, land theft, safety violations that resulted in worker deaths. Her eyes met his. Everything you suspected, and more. Why haven't you turned this over to the authorities? Because Sheriff Hawks is Thorne's partner. Judge Morrison owes his position to Thorne's political connections. The whole system is corrupt. Eli understood. He'd discovered that truth the hard way. So, what's your plan? I was waiting for the right opportunity, the right ally. She studied him carefully. Someone with inside knowledge of the mine operations. Someone with a personal stake in seeing justice done. Someone like me. Someone exactly like you. The desert wind whispered through the canyon, carrying the scent of sage and possibility. For the first time since his exile, Eli felt something other than despair. What did you have in mind? Partnership. She extended her hand. My evidence and resources, your mining expertise and knowledge of current operations. Against Marcus Thorne and his entire network? Against everyone who profits from corruption while innocent people die. Eli grasped her hand. Her grip was firm, calloused from years of desert survival. I don't even know your name. Anita, she said. Anita Carlyle. The name hit Eli like a physical blow. Carlyle. Professor Edmund Carlyle, the renowned geologist who died in a mining accident 3 years ago. The same accident that had supposedly claimed his daughter's life. You're supposed to be dead. Anita's smile held no warmth. Marcus Thorne believes I am. That's been my greatest advantage. She led him deeper into the canyon where the walls opened into a natural amphitheater. Equipment covered every available surface. Water flowed through carefully constructed channels, creating a complex irrigation system that fed thriving plants throughout the oasis. My father discovered this place during his geological survey of the region. Anita ran her hand along sophisticated measuring instruments. He found something that would have made us wealthy beyond imagination. The silver veins? Much more than that. She pulled out a detailed map covered in her father's precise handwriting. Red lines traced underground formations throughout the entire area. Blue marks indicated water sources. Gold symbols marked mineral deposits. My father mapped an entire underground network, not just silver, water, rare minerals, enough to support mining operations for decades. Eli studied the surveys with growing amazement. The scope was staggering. This would be worth millions. Exactly what Marcus Thorne thought when my father shared the preliminary findings. He shared them? My father believed in legitimate business partnerships. He approached Thorne with an offer to develop the resources together. Anita's voice turned bitter. Thorne had different ideas. She opened another portfolio filled with newspaper clippings and official documents. Headlines screamed about the tragic mining accident that had claimed 2 lives. Professor Carlyle and his daughter, both killed in a sudden cave-in while inspecting mine shafts. The accident was carefully staged. Thorne's men caused the collapse after my father and I were supposedly inside. But you escaped? I was never there. My father had grown suspicious of Thorne's intentions. He sent me here with copies of all his research while he went to the final meeting alone. Eli read through the official reports. Everything looked legitimate. Death certificates signed by the town doctor, witness statements from Thorne's men, even a small funeral service attended by prominent townspeople. How did you fake your death? I didn't have to. Thorne's men reported finding 2 bodies in the collapsed tunnel. The doctor never actually examined remains, just signed the certificates based on witness testimony. And nobody questioned it? Who was going to investigate? Sheriff Hawks wrote the official report. Judge Morrison approved the death certificates. The whole system worked exactly as Thorne designed it. Anita showed him photographs of the supposed accident site. The tunnel collapse looked genuine enough, but Eli's experienced eye caught details others would miss. The support beam damage is wrong, he said. This wasn't natural deterioration. Someone used explosives. My father taught me to recognize those signs, too. We documented everything before I went into hiding. Why didn't you expose the truth immediately? With what proof? 2 bodies were supposedly recovered. I would have been killed the moment I revealed myself alive. She folded the maps carefully. I needed time to gather irrefutable evidence, evidence that would destroy Thorne completely. And now you have it? Almost everything. Financial records showing his illegal land acquisitions, documentation of safety violations he's covered up, proof of bribes paid to officials. She paused. But I'm missing one crucial element. What? Inside knowledge of his current operations. Someone who understands exactly how he's implementing the stolen research. Eli understood. Someone like me. Your mining expertise combined with my father's geological surveys would give us everything we need to expose his crimes. What's the endgame? Complete exposure. Criminal charges for murder and fraud. Recovery of my family's stolen research and rightful ownership of these mineral rights. She led him to another section of the canyon where spring water bubbled up through natural rock formations, the source of the life-saving liquid that had sustained him. This spring connects to the underground network my father discovered. The mineral content creates perfect conditions for the extraction process I developed. You mean the stuff that saved my life? Enhanced mineral water. My father's geological research combined with processing techniques I learned from Apache healers. She filled a container from the spring. It's more nutritious than most food and provides perfect hydration for desert survival. How long can someone survive on just this? I've been living on it for 3 years. The implications were staggering. A sustainable water and nutrition source in the middle of the desert. Combined with the mineral wealth her father had discovered, this oasis was worth a fortune. Thorne has no idea what he really stole, does he? He thinks he got some mining, surveys, and geological charts. He has no understanding of the complete system my father developed. But if we expose him, this all becomes public knowledge. Not all of it. The spring location and processing techniques remain our secret. But the stolen surveys and mineral rights rightfully belong to my father's estate. A distant sound interrupted their conversation, horse hooves echoing off canyon walls. Both of them froze. "Riders approaching," Eli whispered. Anita moved with practiced efficiency, covering equipment and securing documents. "Follow me." She led him to a concealed observation point high in the canyon walls. Below, 3 men on horseback rode slowly through the desert, clearly searching for something. Thorne's men, Anita identified them through a small telescope. They've been increasing patrols lately. Looking for what? Unknown. But something has made Marcus Thorne nervous. One of the riders stopped directly below their hiding spot. He dismounted and examined the ground carefully, looking for tracks or other signs of human presence. "We need to be more careful," Anita whispered. "If they discover this place, everything is lost." The riders continued their search for another hour before moving on. Only when their hoofbeats faded completely did Anita and Eli return to the canyon floor. "This changes things," Eli said. "We can't wait much longer." "Agreed, but rushing could destroy 3 years of preparation. How much time do we have?" Anita pulled out a letter from her collection of documents. "According to this correspondence I intercepted, Thorne plans to sell his entire mining operation to Eastern investors within 30 days. Sell it? With fraudulent surveys and stolen research, the investors will pay millions for worthless claims while Thorne disappears with their money. And the real mineral wealth remains hidden until he can return later to claim it under a different identity." Eli felt urgency building in his chest. "Then we have 30 days to stop him. 28 now. The letter was dated 2 days ago." "Can it be done?" Anita looked at him with determination that reminded him of her father's legendary persistence. "With your help, yes. Without it, Marcus Thorne wins everything." The plan required perfect timing. Eli would return to Copper Ridge first, drawing attention while Anita infiltrated the town separately. Their window was shrinking fast. 26 days, Anita reminded him as she prepared his supplies for the journey back. Eli studied his reflection in the spring water. 3 weeks in the desert had changed him. Leaner, harder, with eyes that held new knowledge. The broken exile was gone. Something more dangerous had taken his place. "What's my cover story for surviving?" "Apache traders found you, nursed you back to health, sent you on your way." She handed him documents wrapped in oiled cloth. "Backup copies of everything. Hide them well. And you?" "I'll arrive as a traveling naturalist. Clara Mercier mentioned in her newspaper that the town welcomes visiting scholars." Eli mounted the horse Anita had kept hidden in the canyon. Strong desert breed, capable of the hard journey ahead. "Remember, we don't know each other." "Understood." The ride to Copper Ridge took 2 days. Familiar landmarks triggered memories of his exile. The same rocks where townspeople had thrown stones. The same ridge where Sheriff Hawks had delivered his final warning. Now Eli rode back with purpose burning in his chest. The town appeared unchanged. Same wooden buildings baking in the desert sun. Same dust-covered streets filled with miners heading to evening shifts. But Eli saw everything differently now. He tied his horse outside the Silver Dollar Saloon. Conversation stopped when he pushed through the swinging doors. Every face turned toward him with surprise and suspicion. "Well, well?" Tom Bradley looked up from his whiskey glass. "Look who the desert didn't kill after all." "Tom." Eli nodded and walked to the bar. The bartender hesitated before pouring him a drink. "Heard you were buzzard food by now." "Apache traders found me. Helped me get back on my feet." Murmurs spread through the crowd. Stories of desert survival were rare enough to command attention, even when the survivor was a supposed criminal. "What brings you back?" Sarah Chen appeared beside him, her voice carefully neutral. "Unfinished business." "Thought your business here was finished permanent-like." Eli met her eyes steadily. "Not all of it." News of his return spread fast. By morning, half the town had heard about the exile who'd survived the desert. Sheriff Hawks appeared at Eli's temporary camp outside town limits before the sun reached full strength. "You got nerve showing your face here again." Free country, Sheriff. Not for thieves. My sentence was banishment, not death. I'm outside town limits. Hawks circled him like a predator testing for weakness. What you planning, Kane? Making an honest living. Mining work pays well in other territories. You ain't planning nothing else? Like what? Revenge, causing trouble, stirring up old grievances. Eli kept his expression neutral, just passing through. But Sheriff Hawks wasn't convinced. He posted deputies to watch Eli's movements. The surveillance was obvious, clumsy, designed to intimidate. 3 days later, Clara Mercier arrived with news that changed everything. There's been another cave-in, she announced at the newspaper office where Eli had been reading territorial job listings. 2 men injured. Bad, bad enough. Same section where you used to work. Eli's blood went cold. Section 7, where he'd found the silver vein and documented the rotten support beams. The beams? Still haven't been replaced. That evening, a woman arrived on the stagecoach from Tucson. She wore practical traveling clothes and carried equipment cases. That marked her as some kind of scientist or researcher. Eli watched from his campsite as she checked into the boarding house. Average height, dark hair, unremarkable appearance, perfect camouflage. Anita had arrived. She established herself quickly as a visiting naturalist, studying desert plant life for a university back east. The townspeople, always eager for news from civilization, welcomed her with curiosity and hospitality. Clara Mercier interviewed her for the newspaper. What brings a lady scientist to our little town? Research into adaptive plant species. The desert around Copper Ridge shows unusual mineral content in the soil. I'm documenting which plants thrive in these conditions. Mineral content? Very high concentrations of silver and other valuable elements. It suggests interesting geological formations in the area. Eli watched the interview from across the street. Anita was planting seeds, preparing the ground for later revelations. That night she found him at his campsite. Any problems? Sheriff's suspicious but can't prove anything. You? I've been asking questions about the Carlisle family, testing reactions. And? Most people remember Professor Carlisle fondly. They think his death was a terrible tragedy. She paused. But a few show nervous reactions when I mention his geological surveys. Who? Judge Morrison, the bank president, 2 members of the town council, all Thorne's allies. Exactly. I think some of them know more than they admitted at the time. She handed him a small wrapped package. Documents I need you to verify. Mining records from the period right after my father's death. Eli examined the papers by firelight. Production reports, safety inspections, worker assignments, all signed by Marcus Thorne. These numbers don't match what I remember from working those sections. How so? Silver production jumped 30% immediately after your father died, but I was working those tunnels. The veins weren't that rich. Unless Thorne was mining areas my father had identified but not yet developed, using the stolen surveys. Exactly. A sound in the darkness made them both freeze. Horse hooves approaching slowly, trying to muffle their noise. Company, Eli whispered. Anita melted into the shadows with practiced ease. Eli remained by his fire, acting casual while scanning the darkness. Deputy Mills emerged from the night, hand resting on his gun. Evening, Kane. Thought I heard voices. Just talking to myself. Desert habit. Mills looked around suspiciously. Sounded like 2 people. Echoes carry strange in these canyons. The deputy searched the area but found nothing. Anita had vanished completely. Sheriff says you've been asking questions around town. About job opportunities. Man's got to make a living. See, that's all you're asking about. After Mills left, Anita reappeared from behind a boulder formation. They're watching closer than expected. We need to accelerate the timeline. Agreed, but I discovered something important today. She pulled out a small leather notebook. I found this hidden in my father's old office. Thorne's been using it as storage, but he missed this. The pages contained Edmund Carlisle's personal observations about his business relationship with Thorne, growing suspicions, concerns about safety violations, plans to dissolve their partnership. The final entry is dated the day before his death. Eli read the last passage by firelight. Professor Carlyle had discovered discrepancies in Thorne's safety reports. He'd planned to contact territorial mining authorities the following week. He never got the chance. But this proves Thorne had motive for murder. It's still not enough. We need something that directly connects him to the cave-in. Then we keep digging. Carefully. They're watching both of us now. 22 days left. Then we better make them count. Clara Mercier's investigation took an unexpected turn when she visited the Territorial Records Office in Phoenix. The death certificates she found there didn't match the copies filed in Copper Ridge. The signatures are different, she told Eli during a carefully arranged meeting at the abandoned mine shaft north of town. Someone forged the local documents. Eli examined the papers she'd brought back. Dr. Hammond's signature looks nothing like his usual handwriting. Because Dr. Hammond was in Tucson that week, treating a cholera outbreak, he never examined any bodies from the mine collapse. Then who signed the death certificates? Someone who had access to official documents and knowledge of proper procedures. Anita emerged from the shadows where she'd been keeping watch. Sheriff Hawks has medical training from his Army days. He'd know how to forge official papers. The three of them had formed an unlikely alliance. Clara's journalistic instincts, Eli's mining knowledge, and Anita's scientific expertise created a powerful investigative team. There's more, Clara continued. I found land transfer records that show a pattern. Every time someone died in a mining accident, their claims got transferred to shell companies controlled by Marcus Thorne. How many accidents? 17 over the past 5 years, all with convenient paperwork transfers. Anita spread out her father's geological maps on a flat rock. Look at the locations of these supposed accidents. Red marks indicated each death site. Blue lines showed the underground water network her father had discovered. Gold symbols marked the richest mineral deposits. Every single accident happened on land that contained valuable resources, Eli observed. Resources that Marcus Thorne somehow knew about in advance. Because he was using my father's stolen research to target specific claims. The scope of the conspiracy was staggering. Systematic murder disguised as mining accidents. Forged documents to cover up the crimes. A network of corruption that reached into every level of local government. We need direct proof, Clara said. Something that connects Thorne to the forged documents. I might know where to find it, Anita replied. My father kept detailed correspondence files. If Thorne was planning this systematically, there might be evidence in their business communications. Where are these files? Hidden in our old family home. The house has been empty since our supposed deaths. Too dangerous. Thorne's men patrol that area regularly. Not during the monthly town gathering. Everyone will be focused on the social event. Eli considered the risks. When's the next gathering? Tomorrow night. It's perfect timing because the Eastern investors are scheduled to arrive that morning for their final tour of the mining operation. The sale meeting? Preliminary negotiations. Thorne wants to close the deal quickly. Clara pulled out her notebook. I've been tracking the financial arrangements. The investors are prepared to pay $2 million for mining rights that Thorne claims are worth 5 times that amount. Based on my father's stolen geological surveys. Surveys that show resources the investors don't know exist. Anita rolled up her maps with grim determination. Tomorrow night we get the proof we need. All of it. The plan required split-second timing. During the town gathering, Eli would create a distraction while Anita searched the Carlyle house. Clara would document everything and prepare for the final revelation. What kind of distraction? Clara asked. I'm going to do what Marcus Thorne least expects. Which is? Tell the truth, publicly, in front of the Eastern investors. The next evening, most of Copper Ridge gathered in the town square for the monthly social event. Lanterns hung between buildings, casting warm light over families enjoying music and food. The Eastern investors mingled with prominent townspeople, clearly impressed by the hospitality. Marcus Thorne played the perfect host. Distinguished, charming, every inch the successful businessman. He regaled his guests with stories of frontier mining and projected profits. Gentlemen, you're looking at the future of American industry, he declared. These mineral deposits will generate wealth for generations. Eli watched from the edge of the crowd. Anita had already slipped away toward her family's abandoned house. Clara positioned herself near the makeshift speaking platform with her camera and notebook ready. The geological surveys confirm extraordinary silver concentrations throughout the region, Thorne continued. Conservative estimates suggest 20 years of profitable mining operations. What about safety concerns? Asked one investor. We've heard about recent accidents. Regrettable incidents, but entirely manageable with proper procedures. We've implemented comprehensive safety reforms. Eli stepped forward into the lantern light. That's not true. Conversation stopped. Every head turned toward him. Sheriff Hawks moved his hand to his gun belt. The safety violations haven't been fixed, Eli continued loudly. Men are still dying because of rotten support beams and ignored regulations. Kane! Thorne's face flushed red. You have no business here. I have every business talking about mining safety. I spent 15 years working those tunnels. You spent 15 years stealing from those tunnels. I was framed, and everyone here knows it. Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Some townspeople looked uncomfortable, remembering their own doubts about Eli's guilt. One of the Eastern investors stepped forward. Excuse me, but who is this gentleman? A disgraced former employee with a grudge, Thorne replied quickly. A mining expert with first-hand knowledge of the safety conditions you're buying into, Eli corrected. Do you have evidence of these alleged violations? The investor asked. I have documentation of every safety problem in that mine. Rotten beams, inadequate ventilation, unstable tunnel supports. 3 men died last month alone. Sheriff Hawks started toward Eli, but the investors were asking questions now. Professional men who understood the importance of due diligence. Perhaps we should postpone our final decision until these concerns are addressed, one suggested. Absolutely unnecessary, Thorne insisted. This man is a convicted thief with obvious motives for sabotage. Then you won't mind if we conduct an independent safety inspection? Thorne's confident smile faltered slightly. Of course not, though I assure you it's completely unnecessary. Meanwhile, Anita worked quickly through her family's abandoned house. Dust covered everything, but her father's study remained largely intact. She found the hidden compartment behind his desk, where he'd kept sensitive correspondence. Letters between Professor Carlyle and Marcus Thorne revealed the growing tension in their business relationship. Her father's concerns about safety, his threats to contact territorial authorities, Thorne's increasingly desperate attempts to delay any official investigations. The final letter was devastating, Thorne promising to resolve all concerns permanently before any outside authorities could interfere with their mining operations. Written 2 days before Professor Carlyle's death, Anita photographed every document with Clara's camera equipment. This was the smoking gun they'd been searching for, direct evidence that Marcus Thorne had planned her father's murder. She gathered additional evidence from her father's geological files, original maps showing the true extent of mineral deposits, water table surveys that revealed the underground network, research notes that proved the scope of Thorne's fraud against the Eastern investors. Everything they needed to destroy Marcus Thorne completely. As she prepared to leave, footsteps echoed on the front porch. Someone was coming. Anita pressed herself against the wall as footsteps approached the front door. Through the window, she saw Deputy Mills making his routine patrol. He tested the door handle, found it locked, and moved on. She waited until his footsteps faded before slipping out the back entrance with the evidence secured in her satchel. The town gathering was reaching its peak when she returned to the square. Eli had the Eastern investors completely engaged. His detailed knowledge of mining operations impressed them far more than Thorne's polished sales pitch. "Show us these safety violations," the lead investor demanded. "Gentlemen, I assure you this is unnecessary," Thorne protested. "We insist." Clara stepped forward with her notebook. "I've been documenting safety concerns for weeks. 3 deaths in Section 7 alone. Section 7 was supposed to be reinforced months ago," Eli added. The investors exchanged worried glances. $1-million investments required absolute confidence in operational safety. "Perhaps we should table this discussion until morning," Thorne suggested desperately. "No. Anita's voice cut through the crowd as she emerged into the lantern light. Let's finish it tonight. Gasps echoed through the gathering. People stepped backward, staring at her as if seeing a ghost. Anita Carlyle, Sheriff Hawks breathed. But you're dead. Reports of my death were greatly exaggerated. Marcus Thorne's face went completely white. His confident businessman demeanor crumbled as 3 years of careful planning collapsed around him. Impossible. You died in the mine collapse with your father. I was never in that mine. You killed my father alone. She opened her satchel and pulled out the correspondence files. These letters document everything. Your business relationship with my father, his growing concerns about your illegal activities, your promise to resolve all problems permanently. Clara began photographing each document with practiced efficiency. The crowd pressed closer, hungry for details of the unfolding drama. This letter is dated 2 days before my father's supposed accident, Anita continued. In it, you promise to eliminate any threats to your mining operation before territorial authorities can investigate. Those could be forgeries, Thorne stammered, written on your personal letterhead, in your handwriting, witnessed by your secretary. She produced another document. Death certificate signed by Dr. Hammond, except Dr. Hammond was in Tucson treating a cholera outbreak that week. Sheriff Hawks shifted nervously. Several townspeople were looking at him with growing suspicion. Who actually signed these certificates, Sheriff? Clara asked pointedly. I don't remember the exact details. Because you forged them yourself. That's a serious accusation. Eli stepped forward with additional evidence. Tom, you were working Section 7 the day Professor Carlyle supposedly died. Tell everyone what you really saw. Tom Bradley looked between Eli and Sheriff Hawks, torn between truth and fear. Tom, Anita said gently, my father trusted you. He considered you a friend. The tunnel was already damaged when we got there, Tom finally admitted. Looked like someone had set charges. Professor Carlyle wasn't anywhere around. Then how did he die? There was a body in the collapse, but it was dressed in his clothes, wearing his pocket watch. Murmurs of shock rippled through the crowd. The Eastern investors were taking detailed notes of everything they witnessed. Whose body was it? Clara pressed. Drifter, who'd died of fever the week before. Doc was storing the corpse until the ground thawed enough for burial. Sheriff Hawks made a move toward his gun, but several townspeople stepped forward to block him. The truth was spreading too fast to stop now. You used an unclaimed body to fake my father's death, Anita said. Then you killed him privately and buried him somewhere else. You can't prove any of this. Actually, I can. She pulled out Professor Carlyle's final geological survey. This map shows the true extent of mineral deposits in the region, not just the claims you're selling to these investors. The Eastern investors studied the map with growing alarm. The scope of resources was far beyond what Thorne had described in their negotiations. You're selling them worthless surface claims while keeping the real treasure for yourself, Eli explained. Based on research you stole from Professor Carlyle, Anita added. The mineral rights alone are worth 10 times what you're asking, the lead investor said coldly. This constitutes massive fraud. Thorne looked around desperately for support, but found none. Even his closest allies were backing away from association with obvious criminal activity. Judge Morrison, Clara called out, did you know about the forged death certificates when you approved the estate transfers? The judge's face revealed his guilt before he could speak. I trusted Sheriff Hawks to handle the paperwork properly. Sarah, what about the witness statements you provided? Sarah Chen looked ashamed. They threatened my family if I didn't cooperate. One by one, the conspiracy unraveled as fear gave way to truth. People who had remained silent for years finally found the courage to speak. The Eastern investors formally withdrew their offer and threatened legal action for attempted fraud. Sheriff Hawks, faced with overwhelming evidence, confessed his role in exchange for reduced charges. Marcus Thorne's empire crumbled in a single evening, not through violence or revenge, but through the systematic exposure of truth. 6 months later, the desert around Anita's hidden oasis had transformed into a thriving mining community. Ethical labor practices attracted skilled workers from across the territory. Fair wages and genuine safety. Protocols created loyalty instead of fear. Eli supervised daily operations with the expertise of 15 years' experience and the wisdom of a man who'd learned justice's true value. The rotten support beams that had killed so many miners were replaced with solid timber and steel reinforcements. Clara's newspaper expanded into a territorial publication, ensuring that corruption like thorns could never again flourish in darkness. Her documentation of the Copper Ridge conspiracy became a model for investigative journalism throughout the West. Anita reclaimed her family's stolen legacy and developed it into something her father would have been proud of. The underground network of springs provided sustainable water for the growing community, while the mineral wealth funded schools, hospitals, and infrastructure. The desert that had nearly claimed Eli's life now bloomed with prosperity, built on truth and mutual respect. What had begun with betrayal and exile ended with redemption and justice. The Black Widow's milk had saved more than one man's life. It had nourished the seeds of a better world.